Welcome, everyone. We'll be starting in just a moment. Everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm just confirming quorum. We'll be starting in just a moment. And Jeremy, we can go ahead and go live. Councilmember Campbell, we do have quorum.
Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Human Services Community Initiative Committee meeting. Let's call the meeting to order. Members should be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube as a way for the members of the public to participate. Please keep that in mind when you're making your comments. I will ask that each of you keep your microphones on mute when you are not speaking. You can use the chat function throughout Zoom if you need to make a comment about a technical or a logistical issue. Please know that the chat will also be recorded and part of the public meeting record. And for the purpose of the meeting minutes, I will ask that you state your name before any comments so that we will have your comments on record. Finally, for the action items, we will be taking a roll call vote, and I will ask staff to call out the committee names and then ask how you will vote. Let's move on to introductions, and I will be asking staff to call each member of the committee and ask that you introduce yourself and your organization. So Brandy, will you please announce the names of the committee for introductions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Let's start with Councilmember Ali Klein. Councilmember Klein. Okay, Councilmember Tina Condi.
Brandy, this is Chris Lopez. Councilmember Tina Condi is unable to attend. We have staff in attendance.
Okay, thank you so much. And Vice Mayor Jen Duff. Okay, Supervisor Gallardo. Councilmember Michelle Hess.
Present.
Thank you. And Councilmember Betty Janik.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Joel Navarro. Councilmember Bill Patina.
Good morning, everyone. This is Bill Patina with the City of Peoria. Happy to be part of this committee.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Councilmember Patina is a new member. Welcome.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mark Stewart.
Good morning.
Thank you. And Councilmember Amy Yentis.
Here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And our chair, Councilmember Wally Campbell.
Thank you, Councilmember Wally Campbell from the City of Goodyear. Thank you, Brandy. Is that all of us now?
Did I miss anyone?
I just made it. Ali Klein.
Klein is on.
Thank you for joining us, Councilmember Klein.
All right, we will now move on to the call to the audience. Please note that members of the public were given an opportunity to submit written comments relating to this meeting's morning to azmag.gov/comments within 1 hour of the posted start time of the meeting. So Brandy, has staff received any comments from the public?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, no, we have not.
Thank you. We will now move to the approval of the consent agenda. And as a reminder, please note that the committee members may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if there is a need for discussion. However, members cannot comment on a consent agenda without first requesting that it be moved for discussion. Is there a request to move any item from the consent agenda at this time? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Please state your name when making the motion.
Betty Janik, I move to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Ally Klein, second.
It's been moved by council member and a second by Councilman Klein that we approve the consent agenda. Roll call, please. Brandy?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Duff is joining us in a bit. Councilmember Hess.
Aye.
Councilmember Patena.
Aye.
Councilmember Stewart.
Aye.
Councilmember Yentis.
Aye.
And did I miss anyone in attendance? We got the motion in the second. Okay, thank you. It is approved.
Thank you. Motion is approved. We will now, excuse me, we will now move to item number 4, and it's an update on Regional Homelessness Initiative. We will begin with a presentation by Amy St. Peter, who is the MAG Deputy Executive Director, providing an update on activities that are currently underway. Amy?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be able to spend this time with you today. We have a quick update for you, as well as some new material that we'd love to get in front of you because of its importance to all of our communities throughout the region. Can the PowerPoint be started, please? Excellent, thank you very much. So we spoke earlier about this work. It continues really in force, and we're very excited to be able to share this update with you today. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, these are the areas of focus that we have in front of us right now. All of this is very important. We are ramping up our efforts to address homelessness at that regional level. And in doing so, we're able to partner with a number of people throughout the region. That includes, of course, you as our member agencies, our cities and towns. We're partnering very closely with the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care, as well as nonprofits and a number of other stakeholders throughout the community. In particular, though, I'd like to highlight one of our partners, and that's the Regional Collaborative on Homelessness. This is a partnership of 6 different regional entities who are all engaged in the space of homelessness and all doing so at that regional level. So that membership includes MAG, Maricopa County, the Arizona Housing Coalition, ASU Action Nexus, Viola's Health Foundation, and the United Way. And so through all of these partners, it's imperative that we keep focus and that we keep really focused on the work ahead of us and the importance of it. So these are the main areas of focus as this work unfolds. And it's really looking at how can we reduce the number of people who are experiencing homelessness, as well as keeping an eye on that population who are at risk, such as the people who may become homeless for the first time when the moratorium is lifted on evictions. We're expecting an absolute flood of people becoming homeless, which could easily overwhelm our system. So all the more reason to maintain that focus right now. We also want to make sure that we're increasing access to homeless assistance programs throughout the entire region. Every community has an opportunity to engage in this work. Many communities are very, very deeply and very intensively. There are additional opportunities, though, for additional communities to become involved and to really closely examine the resources that they have and the opportunities that might be brought to bear through partnerships. And we're also looking at strengthening that safety net for all people, which is where that it touches on race and ethnicity and racial equity, as well as a number of other areas too. Part of this presentation will include a report on the recent racial inequity work that was just undertaken by our Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care, and that was approved by their board last month. We'll also have some additional data for you about eviction trends, particularly as they pertain to communities that have a higher percentage of people who are minorities, and being able to look at some of the systemic issues really that contribute to that. So you can see there's a tremendous amount of work underway right now, but we are maintaining our focus in these 3 key areas, particularly as the work unfolds through the strategies. We're developing and deepening the strategies in the areas of housing, shelter, services, diversion and prevention, as well as coordination, but all of it ties back to these 3 areas. Next slide, please. This is a process that we're undertaking. We want to make sure that you're clear on this and that you have every opportunity to engage in this process throughout every single step. So first we started by looking at your strategies, looking at the plans that you have to address homelessness, and really wanting to make sure that we are really deeply integrating this work with your local priorities. The best regional plans respond to your local priorities and your needs. And so we want to make sure that we're embedding this work in what's going on in each of the communities throughout the region. After that, we took a look at what are the absolute best, most effective practices nationally at the regional level. And so we've engaged with consultants, and they've helped us to conduct some really good research of the absolute most effective practices and helping us to deepen our understanding of those practices and realizing that a number of them are already at play right here in our region, and the chances that we have, the opportunities that we have then to be able to replicate those successes at the community level, to replicate those region-wide. All of this is continuing on through the funnel, and we've developed more than 40 different draft regional strategies in those 5 categories that I just mentioned. We are starting to filter through those strategies, getting more feedback on those strategies, and starting to prioritize them. We're establishing criteria that we can use to consistently prioritize each of those strategies, and using those 5 regional goals as an additional filter. And so those goals were developed on the basis of the outreach, the research, the analysis that's been conducted to date. And all of this is driving towards the development of a regional portfolio. And we are being very intentional about calling it a portfolio because there are a range of actions. We're not going to force any community to do anything that's not a good fit for them. We are wanting to offer lots of opportunities, though, for communities to engage in this work. So we'll be presenting a whole range of different strategies. Some are higher profile, some are lower. We want all of them, though, to have an impact, and we want every single strategy to be measurable. As we undertake this work, we want to make sure that all of it's measurable, that we can hold ourselves accountable for making progress on these strategies. We want to make sure that the work is inclusive, that it's regional, every community can participate, and that it is more sustainable. We want to make sure that we're putting things into place that we can carry forward far into the future to make sure that we keep the progress that we're making right now. All of this work is supported by the research, the outreach, and the coordination, and we have a lot of work underway in each one of those areas. Next slide, please. This is the progress that we've made to date. I'm very excited about this, and it was only possible because of your partnership and because of our other partnerships around this work. So in terms of our outreach, we're measuring that in a couple different ways. We have 2 different surveys that just concluded, and we want to thank you because it really was extremely helpful to be able to work through the cities, the towns, the counties to distribute this survey. So those 2 surveys included one for law enforcement and one for first responders. We understand and appreciate that solving homelessness is not necessarily their primary responsibility, but very often they're the first person to come into contact with somebody who is experiencing homelessness. And in doing so, they have a unique opportunity then to be able to connect that person who's experiencing homelessness with the needed resources to help them break that cycle very early and to attain housing and then to maintain housing. And so we're looking at really promising practices such as the misdemeanor repeat offender program that is present in a few of our local communities right now, and opportunities that we might have to expand that, replicate that regionally, and being able to coordinate our approaches to ensure that people are receiving similar levels of care and to make sure that communities are working together to their benefit. Also, we have an extensive series underway right now with our outreach forums. We actually have one later on today, so it's not too late if you'd like to join us. We have our business forum just later on this afternoon. Earlier this week, we had one with philanthropy. We've also had one with the housing community and 3 with nonprofits. We held those very early, and 3 of them because we wanted to make sure that we're embedding this work in the extensive expertise of the nonprofit community to make sure that we're learning from them, being on the front lines, working in the trenches to make sure that we're benefiting from the expertise and carrying that forward through all of the strategies. We have collected 15 of your budgets. Those were actually given to us, so thank you for that. Again, a big thank you to the cities, towns, counties for your assistance in this. Those budgets are helping to support our analysis in terms of the municipal spending. It's critically important to
Amy,
acknowledge.
I apologize. We just lost your audio. At least I did. I'm not sure if others. Oh, you're back.
Okay. Is audio okay now? Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for letting me know. I'm I'm not sure what caused the interruption there. In analyzing the level of spending that you're already committing, we can gain an appreciation for what's being invested right now in our region, and then we can also be in a better position to be able to identify any potential funding gaps as we're implementing those new strategies, and to set appropriate fundraising targets to cover that gap. We do have 2 studies underway. One of those is the municipal spending study that I just referenced. The other one is around siting considerations, and that one is nearly complete. We're very excited to be able to offer the results to you, because through that study, we're particularly looking at what are the considerations that communities need to take into account when they're citing new homeless assistance programs. So particularly where we're very focused on geographically dispersing homeless assistance programs throughout the entire region, that means that a number of communities will be citing those programs for the first time. And we want to make sure that you absolutely have the best tools and that you're in the best position to be able to implement those programs more successfully. And again, driving towards that regional portfolio, which will come for approval in May. Next slide, please. So these are the next steps as we're undertaking them right now. I do want to emphasize, please do reach out early and often through every single one of these next steps. Your feedback is critically important. It helps us to make sure that we're aligning our efforts with your priorities, that we are fully addressing your needs, and we are exceeding your expectations through all of this. So whether that's through one-on-one interviews or meetings where we can meet with you and your staff, or whether that's us coming to your city councils, that's an absolutely critical step, because we want to make sure that you have the support that you need to be able to have your council approve these strategies for implementation in your communities. And it also gives us an additional opportunity to gain your feedback and to better understand the dynamics as they are manifesting in your community. So please do consider that. As we move forward and continue that feedback loop with you, we are continuing to engage in the outreach series. We will have one for municipal staff on March 30th. We are scheduling one for elected officials for early April, and we really do hope that you'll join us at that time, because we'll really be able to present to you all of what we've learned so far from the other outreach forums, as well as from the research and the data analysis, and be able to reflect that back to you. So very, very excited for that, and hope to be able to share that information with you, and most importantly, to get your feedback on what we've learned, and to be able to have the benefit of your direction as we finalize that portfolio for approval in May then. We are working very diligently on an interactive tool, and that will help us to really visually demonstrate where are the homeless assets right now, where are the nonprofit agencies and the housing, the shelter, the services throughout the region to address homelessness. Also, where's the need? So we'll be also showing the need as demonstrated by population concentrations of people who are experiencing homelessness, as well as those who might be at risk, such as callers to 911, and being able to show their locations as well. So our regional analytics division is working very hard on that. Maggie will present to you in just a bit about some of our eviction trend analysis. Great effort right there. We're working to prioritize those strategies and goals. And again, we'll be offering those strategies for approval come May. Next slide, please. And this is my contact information. You know me. Please do feel free to reach out at any time. Our team is working very, very hard. We have a great team on staff. We have a great team outside of the agency, and we want to make sure that we're engaging with you and really delivering a responsive, relevant plan that will help to meet your needs. In terms of that planning process, we are driving towards the development of those strategies come May, an implementation plan come August, and then after that, going into an even deeper effort, really diving more specifically into the subpopulations with a regional plan to end homelessness. But we appreciate your partnership through all of this. I would like to transition now to Nikki Stevens. She works with the City of Tempe. She's been one of the people helping to lead our work in racial equity. She's been supported by Samantha Jackson with the Downtown Phoenix Partnership, as well as by Julie Montoya on our MAG staff, who's just done a fantastic job of providing really critical support to these efforts. I'm sure that we'll be able to take questions at the end, but at this point, I'd like to transition over to Nikki Stevens, please. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you guys for allowing me to present today to your committee on racial equity and homelessness in Maricopa County. Can we start the slideshow, please? Okay, so As she said, I'm Nikki Stevens. I'm the Homeless Solutions Supervisor for the City of Tempe. We did this work with the partnership of Jeff Olivet and Donald Whitehead with Racial Equity Partners. Can we go to the next slide, please? So first of all, I would like to thank MAG. MAG has been a leader in this work for over the last year. They really put a lot of effort and money towards working on some of the inequities we saw as a system. And this was way before, the social unrest of last summer and the unfortunate death of George Floyd. So this I thought was so important. And I had been looking at a lot of these trends for many years. So what I was seeing during our point in time count was the number of specifically Black and Native populations, and looking how their actual population in comparison to how they are entering into our homeless system, the disparities that we were seeing in that area. So if you kind of look at the county overview of what the general population actually is for some of these race and ethnicities, then you look at the coordinated entry system, which is the system where people experiencing homelessness enter. So, just specifically for Black, you see that there are a little over 6% of the actual general population and represent about 32% of the people that enter into our homeless system. And the same with Native Americans. Those kind of the populations that we were looking at, and why there is such a huge difference, 3.5 times more times that especially Black individuals were entering into the homeless system. Can we go into the next slide, please? So some of the things that we worked on was was doing an assessment of the actual entire system. So we did an analysis of the data through the HMIS system, which is the Homeless Management Information System. This is the system where we as a community track people experiencing homelessness. We keep those data points. We also had focus groups, and through these focus groups, we were able to interview people who had lived experience of homelessness. These included a wide variety. Sorry, I'm hearing a tapping. A wide variety of populations, single adults, family members, and people experiencing, in youth, and those are our 18 to 24-year-old range. We also did 12 individual and group interviews with our community stakeholders. These were a multitude of individuals and community members and nonprofits. One of the other things we did too was an analysis of about 240 responses. There was a survey that was put out to a multitude of agencies that MAG had provided, and this allowed people to give us information about how they felt that we were responding to homelessness, and specific to people of color. And the other thing we did was the review of our policies and procedures, which I think is extremely important, because if we're not looking at those policies and procedures, we're not able to actually make a dent in the background or a dent in the information and how we are processing and the procedures of how we are entering people and documenting their homelessness in our response system. Can I go to the next slide, please? So as you can see, African Americans experience homelessness at 3.9 times greater rate than their actual population. Native Americans, that's double of their actual general population. And for Hispanic and Latino and Latina people, they're underrepresented among those experiencing homelessness, and our white and Asian Americans are dramatically underrepresented in comparison to their population. Can we go to the next slide, please? So some of the points that we were pulled out of doing all of this assessments is, a lot of the negative stereotypes for people experiencing homelessness as lazy, unmotivated, and they're there by choice. These were some of the stuff that we had pulled from the analysis that we did and looking at people's feedback about our system. A lot of the clients that were mentioned were they perceived racial bias in our current assessment process. So that we do use an assessment tool called the Vulnerability Index SPDAT tool, the VI SPDAT. So that's a universally used tool throughout our continuum of care to assess individuals and see what housing intervention that they qualify for. So one of the other things was that African American and Latinx people experience homelessness for more days than average white and Native American populations. People of color were more likely than their white peers to return to homelessness from permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing interventions. And one of the things from my professional experience of working at Save the Family was that we were seeing a lot of families of color, specifically Black and Native populations, that were returning to homelessness after their rapid rehousing interventions. And one of the things we couldn't figure out was the why, and that's still something that we are trying to work on. We also know that racial discrimination in housing in our criminal justice system exists, and it affects people of color, and it drives the high rates of homelessness. The court system is something that historically does not track evictions by race and ethnicity, making it difficult to see if there's any patterns or ways that we can intervene to assist those individuals. So I'm excited that Maggie Wong is going to be presenting on that later on, which I think is extremely important. And I'm excited that that's something that we are going to be focusing on as a community. The homeless workforce in Maricopa County is racially diverse, which is a great thing, with 47% of the workforce and 40% of the executive leaders and board members identified as people of color. 36% of the homeless service workforce has personal lived experience. I call it lived expertise. We know that people with lived expertise assist us in making decisions that are important to interventions on homelessness and our response to homelessness. So that was good to see. Next slide, please. So this is kind of our road ahead, what we are going to be looking at based on all of those, that information that's been collected. We're looking at our coordinated entry system, looking at maybe redesigning that coordinated entry system to achieve a more equitable outcomes for the people that we are serving. The data, we always talk about making data-driven decisions. So we do have this data. So we are going to continue to examine our homeless response system to see how we can make a direct impact, and looking at those data trends to see if we are making an impact after we implement some of these ideas that we have on how we can make it more equitable. We are also going to be looking to people with lived expertise, particularly people of color, in our decision-making and our roles in the homeless response system. We think this is extremely important to ensure that we have outcomes that are equitable. Workforce is extremely important. We want to develop and sustain a homeless service workforce and organizations that is diverse, inclusive, and committed to anti-racism. And we know that a lot of organizations have begun this work already, which is exciting. So when we are actually, as the continuum of care has adopted this plan, we're excited to see that a lot of agencies have already begun this really difficult, hard work, and we're really proud of that. Our additional focus is going to be on prevention and cross-sector collaboration, looking at the criminalization of homelessness and housing discrimination. And we're hoping with all of these strategies and this plan laid out that we will be able to achieve a more equitable system to people that we are serving in the homeless response system throughout Maricopa County. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy and Nikki. We appreciate your presentations. And I do have a question for Amy, if you don't mind, if I might go back to Amy's presentation.
I don't mind at all, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Will you be sure that when you set up the meeting with the elected officials for April, that you make sure that all of our committee is invited so that we can participate in it?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. Be happy to do
Because
that.
we need to get that on our calendar now since we're filling up.
Yes.
That would be great. So thank you. So does any member of the committee have any questions for either Amy or Nikki at this time?
Madam Chair, I have a question. One of the
Okay.
slots, this
Excuse
is
me,
Bill.
just a moment. Identify yourself first and then speak so that we have it on record. Sorry, Bill.
That's okay. Bill Patana, City of Peoria. I have a question. On one of the slides, you said that people of color are more likely to go back into homelessness even after being housed. And the question you had was you don't know why. Is there anything that you're doing at this point to try to determine what that why might be?
So I think as a community, those are things that we are still trying to work on. I know that Maggie has some stuff around evictions as well. And we have as a community trying to look at our eviction courts and maybe are there more, can we strengthen our housing-based case management system so that when people are going into housing, we're operating from a strength-based approach and supporting those individuals in maybe a different capacity so that we can have better outcomes. So those are kind of the strategies. We're still in the works of trying to identify that, but it is something extremely important. We also know that people, when we're doing our coordinated entry and our housing assessments, that people of color score more highly in the rapid rehousing range. We don't know why. So we are looking at our assessment tools and trying to determine if those were equitable as well.
All right, thank you.
And
welcome.
Madam Chair, if I may, just note that Maggie is still due to present. So whenever the committee is ready, we'd like to, she's ready and willing and able and excited to be able to offer that eviction data for your benefit today.
Thank you very much. So are there any additional questions for either Amy or Nikki? And if not, then I would like to invite Maggie Wong, MAG staff, to give a presentation on evictions among minority populations.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Good morning. My name is Maggie Wong. I'm a research analyst at MAG with the Regional Analytics Division. We've been receiving monthly evictions data from the Maricopa County Justice Courts and have some initial analysis of trends that we'd like to share with you all today. Next slide. So first, a quick look at evictions data since the beginning of last year. So when we compare February of 2020 to February of 2021, there's been a 44% decrease in eviction cases filed. And you can really see that significant decrease in March, April, and May, likely due to the eviction moratorium put in place during the pandemic. But it did start to rise again towards the end of the year with a high in December of over 4,000 evictions filed. And just for reference, prior to the pandemic, monthly evictions were generally around 6,000 filings per month. Next slide, please. So as Nikki mentioned before, the eviction data itself is limited on demographics, but what we've done is we've paired it with census data from the American Community Survey so that we can estimate based on block groups. This provides additional analysis on the demographic characteristics in areas that these evictions are taking place. So for example here, we are finding that over 60% of 2020 eviction filings were in areas with high minority population. So this map of Maricopa County is showing evictions as dots, with evictions in block groups that have a minority population of over 50% in that bright turquoise color. The gray dots represent all other evictions from 2020. We also looked at evictions filings since 2019, and the proportion of evictions in higher minority areas has been consistently over 60% for the past few years, even after the drop in cases from the moratorium. So although there have been fewer evictions cases in the past year, the percentage in higher minority areas has remained pretty consistent. Next slide, please. We also see that 79% of evictions in 2020 were in lower income areas, block groups where the median household income was under $65,000. So on this map here, the bright magenta dots show evictions in these lower income areas, with the gray dots showing all other evictions. Next slide, please. This chart shows a more detailed distribution for 2020 evictions by household income range. And you can see in the purple, those lower income ranges, the majority are in block groups that have income of $25,000 to $45,000. Next slide, please. And finally, we also see that 62% of evictions in 2020 were in areas with higher poverty. So these are block groups where over 15% of the population is below poverty. Evictions in higher poverty areas are shown on the map as blue dots, and the gray dots show all other 2020 evictions. Next slide, please. So aside from the Justice Court's data, there is also data on evictions coming from the Household Pulse Survey put out by the US Census Bureau. This survey samples responses on household experiences during the coronavirus pandemic, including housing challenges. So here we're looking at the most recent data for February 3rd through 15th of 2021. In the Phoenix metro area, 26% of survey respondents reported that they are not confident in their ability to pay next month's rent. And this is compared to 24% of respondents in the state of Arizona and 28% in the entire US. So in our region, 9% of respondents said they have no confidence and 18% reported only slight confidence in making rent. Next slide, please. Another question asked, for respondents who are not current on rent, what is the likelihood of eviction in the next 2 months? So in our region, over 30% of survey respondents reported a likelihood of eviction. And that's compared to 31% in Arizona and 43% in the US. So in the Phoenix metro area, 27% of respondents said that an eviction was very likely, and 4% said that it was somewhat likely. We do want to note that this percentage is down from the end of last year. Back at the beginning of November, 70% of respondents in the Phoenix metro area reported a likelihood of eviction. So we have mainly been tracking these 2 key data points from the Household Pulse Survey, but there are many other questions related to education, employment, food security, health, and more. Next slide, please. Wraps up our quick summary of eviction trends in the region. We have a variety of other data tools available at data.azmag.gov and maps.azmag.gov. We're also continuing to look into different types of analysis using this evictions data alongside data on homelessness in the region, and look forward to sharing more in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Maggie. I appreciate all of the presentations that you have given to the committee this morning, and it's an awful lot of information for us to take in. And please, committee members, if after you digest all of these presentations and review them once again, if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to our MAG staff, because they would like very much to be sure that you're on the same page that they're on, so that we can fight this all together as one. So does anyone have any comments or questions on any of the presentations at this time? Well, thank you all very much for your very informative presentations. And I will move now to item number 5. And I'd like to welcome Joan Service, the
Madam Chair,
oh yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I couldn't get my mute off quick enough, but I just had one comment or question. And looking, and this is Vice Mayor Jen Duff in Mesa, Arizona. I just wanted to ask, historically, I believe Arizona has had the highest eviction rates in the United States. Is that correct? It's disturbing to see on the presentation how the disparity between the national average and Arizona and Phoenix. But is this something historically that we're challenged with because of, we won't go into that with our laws and such, but this is just a reflection of that, or is this new?
I'd encourage Maggie and Nikki to weigh in as well. I do know that currently we have the highest rate in the country. I'm not as familiar with the historical trend data on that, and we need to check that. I'm not sure if Maggie might have any more insights on that from looking at the data.
Our analysis so far has been focusing just on this past year with the pandemic impact, but we can certainly look into historical trends and report back later.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions or comments from our board? And I'll give you enough time. It is hard sometimes to get the mute off, and I understand that. I'm sorry, Councilmember Duff. All right, I will now move to item number 5, and I want to welcome Joan Service, who is the Executive Director of the Arizona Housing Coalition. And Joan will provide an overview of the work of the coalition as well as a legislative update for us. I do not hear.
Hi there. Good morning, everybody. Wanted to make sure that you can see the screen.
Yes, we can, Joan.
Okay, fantastic. Just wanted to go through. Thank you for having me. First off, once again, my name is Joan Service, and I am the executive director of the Arizona Housing Coalition. We are a collaborative association that works to end homelessness and advocates for safe, affordable homes for all Arizonans. Think of us, if you would, as a League of Cities and Towns, which we work quite closely with, or the County Supervisors Association, in that we do a lot of the similar activities, education, kind of the best practices and the latest innovations, training to ensure a highly skilled workforce. And then we advocate at the federal, state, and local levels. And then we are the lead agency that coordinates the Arizona Veterans Stand Down event. I know many of you are familiar with that event. And we coordinate the Maricopa County Stand Down and support other communities stand downs as well throughout the state. I'm not going to run through a lot of the data because, again, most of the data that we get, we actually rely on MAG. So thank you all for the high level of detail that you provide in terms of how many folks are experiencing homelessness. But again, just the brief recap: almost 11,000 people are experiencing homelessness, and that was a pre-pandemic number. And again, you've seen this graph as well, this graphic as well, to show the significant increase of folks living on the streets, including a significant increase of folks who are unsheltered, an 18% from 2019 to 2020, and a staggering 192% increase since 2015. And really what that reflects is a significant increase in home and rental prices, and so has the cost of healthcare, childcare, and so much more, resulting in far too many people being priced out of their home. Frankly, as I've shared often with folks, we are a highly nimble and highly responsive field, and we are really working hard to ensure that folks who are experiencing homelessness do not acquire or transmit the coronavirus. And it's really our case managers who are doing the yeoman's work in ensuring that success. But we need to ensure that those individuals, those staff members have the greatest resources to do this. We know that homelessness is a complex problem. And as has been presented at MAG in previous committee meetings and board meetings, we are expecting an increase, a conservative number of up to 16% increase in homelessness due to COVID-19. So responding to homelessness requires that very, not a one size fits all, many funding streams. And really the tough but necessary conversations that we have right now around evictions, about shelter space, about systemic inequities, if we have those conversations now and we make better choices to weather the virus, we're going to be in a better position to ensure that folks have a safe, affordable place to call home. As has been discussed, quite extensively around evictions, we are seeing, as Maggie just shared, a significant increase. Arizona, especially Maricopa County, but Arizona is really struggling with evictions. And to be fair to Councilwoman Duff's point, evictions are a pressing issue that has been ripe for reform before the pandemic. And it's, it really has exacerbated our affordable housing crisis. And we actually held not too long ago an eviction forum with Matthew Desmond, the author of Evicted. And really what I've shared time and time again is that evictions are a no-win, lose situation. The renter loses the safety and stability of their home. The tenant loses the loss of income. And the community loses with further strains on the judicial system, the healthcare system, and the education system. When we talk about evictions, we do need to ensure that that the necessary equations are part of this conversation. We need to make sure that we're managing the supply side, but we also need to make sure that as part of the supply side is that our landlords are taken care of as well. And this is where rental assistance that we're seeing come at the federal and state and local level is really important. Many renters have not received rent for upwards of 9 months, and yet they are responsible for ensuring property taxes are paid and taxes and payroll and upkeep. And really what we want to avoid is anybody being evicted from their homes, but we want to make sure that both the landlord and the renter is protected with this rental assistance to ensure or to prevent what happened during the last economic downturn, where we saw a lot of industrial investors come in and take what we call our naturally occurring affordable housing, kind of the Class C, Class D properties. They got gobbled up by some investors, and those investors don't have the community ties to Arizona that ensure that stability of housing. So we need to really ensure that rental aid gets filtered down to both the landlord and the tenant. So to that end, when we talk about the need, I'll just share this graph from the National Low Income Housing Coalition and our organization. And it reflects the fact that we do not have enough affordable housing stock in our community. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, we have a deficit of 134,758 affordable and available housing for extremely low income renters. Only 2 other states, Nevada and California, have a similar shortage. And the reality is that's due to the fact that since the Great Recession in 2008, 2010, a lot of our cheap housing has dried up. We've had budget cuts. We've had slash funding for rental assistance. Evictions have steadily risen, and homeless prevention programs have shut down. And so ultimately we have this sudden desire or sudden need to address this situation. I think we often think, oh, you've all heard that saying, go west, young man, go to Arizona, put your flag in the sand and make a stance for yourself. And you can find that community, that home. But the reality is that it's far too out of reach for far too many people. When I talk about funding, I'm going to share this in the chat after my presentation. This is actually graphics that we received from Vitalist Health Foundation. I want to give credit to where credit is due, but it shows the conglomeration of federal, state, and local funding to address housing affordability. And the reason why I share all this is because when we talk about some of our legislative priorities, it really is around some of the funding streams and increasing that funding. As you can see, and again, I'll make this available in the chat afterwards, the orange bars are really federal resources and incentives that go typically often go directly to local municipalities to administer to nonprofits and service providers. The blue lines down at the bottom are some of the private resources and incentives that we've started to see. For example, the Arizona Community Foundation, the Permanent Supportive Housing Fund. It's now called the Arizona Housing Fund. You might have heard Howard Epstein talk about this from Bank of America. And then this new fund called the Nonprofit Hospital Community Benefit, which has now been actually renamed to Home Matters for Arizona. And that's a conglomeration of funds from some of our managed care organizations. And again, it's the business community. It's reflective of the business community coming to address the issue of affordable housing and homelessness. But what you don't see a lot of is this purple line, and that's the state resources and investment. And that's where we spend a lot of our time and efforts. So to that end, we do monitor. We work with many national partners, but we monitor the federal budget and housing bills. We're watching to ensure that federal agencies like HUD, SAMHSA, and HHS receive their full funding to address housing and stability. We're also watching the incoming or the new administration, and while the affordable housing crisis and homelessness crisis wasn't a talking point on the presidential campaign, President Biden did put did put forth a housing blueprint, which broadly entails expanding the housing choice voucher program and states receiving government money to create more units. And then obviously to reinstate efforts to mitigate discriminatory housing practices. At the state level, we are really encouraging, again, that increased state investment in the form of the State Housing Trust Fund, which was back in its heyday about $40 million. It was created in the late 90s and is funded, historically funded from unclaimed property proceeds. During the last Great Recession, it was swept and then capped at $2.5 million. And we've been working with the state legislature to increase that fund. We do have several pieces of legislation, most recently House Bill 2489, sponsored by Representative Chavez, which was amended to allow for a $5 million one-year investment to the Housing Trust Fund. And then Senator Alston put forth a bill 1762, which would reinstate the State Housing Trust Fund back to its pre-recession level of 55% of unclaimed property proceeds, which we believe would have an economic impact to the state general fund of about $10 million. And then finally, I know we're short on time, so I'll just say that finally, the other initiative that we are working on is enacting a state low-income housing tax credit, which mirrors the federal low-income housing tax credit and is similar to 20 other states that have a similar tax credit. And it would create an incentive to developers to get into the affordable housing space where you can actually make some of these affordable housing projects pencil, because it does take that myriad conglomeration of fundings to make developments work. And then we are supportive at the local level and we do have a toolkit, which I'll also drop in the chat box, about efforts to develop affordable housing at the local level. I'll speed through the last. We just talked about this, that, I believe when we talk about racial disparities, I think we need to begin in housing and some of the housing policies and housing funding to address some of the systemic racism that we see and that has been discussed. And then finally, I'll just leave this. This is my contact information. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions or comments.
Thank you very much. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Joan?
This is Vice Mayor Duff again, Mesa, Arizona. Is there any rumblings or any talk about the state changing their laws so municipalities, local governments can dictate to their developers, their builders, a certain amount, a percentage of their developments for affordable, for workforce, any demands? It's a healthier way to live than having, separate units completely. If it's just integrated with what we already do, I think that's the healthiest and approachable solution. Not completely, but I think it would help tremendously. But have you heard anything through the legislation that might address that?
There has been legislation that has been introduced by the Minority Caucus in previous years. I think that there was a real hope that the legislative balance of power would shift this last election. It did not. And some of the progressive organizations were really focused on seeing what kind of changes could be implemented, one of which would be what you're talking about, which is inclusionary zoning, which is currently not allowed in the state of Arizona. I think it's going to take the political will, which is not currently there, to make that happen.
I'm sad. Thank you.
Any additional questions from the committee members?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Hi. Joan, great presentation, and thank you so much for the information. Everyone that's presented so far has created the great information. One of the things that I don't think has been addressed, and I noticed in one of the charts, it seems like touristy communities, areas with high rates of Airbnbs, VBROs, that seem to sort of, and I'm 100% for property rights. If I own my home and I want to rent it, I can. But there seems to be a real supply and demand issue in those areas. Has that talked about in these meetings?
Yes. A lot of times when I meet with lawmakers at the legislature, they're really focused in on unit production, and we haven't trudged too much into the Airbnb. Legislators have, but the Housing Coalition hasn't trudged too much into the Airbnb and short-term rental vacation conversation. We are a huge proponent of let's get housing production online. We need to have housing options available for all income strata. And where we're really missing is that extremely low income housing. We recognize that there's challenges when we do see some of the first time homes being purchased by Airbnb, the Airbnb renters or owners. We recognize that takes away that first-time home ownership opportunity for a lot of the communities a lot of the folks that are struggling to access and to enter into the home ownership realm. So we recognize that there's a real challenge there. We have not, to be fully transparent, we have not figured out the appropriate policy solution. What we do advocate for is let's bring more resources to bear, especially at the state level, and let's bring more units online.
Joan, thank you for that. And I was just curious, like, one of the things that could hopefully, and I don't think this can be done in a meeting like this, but it's certainly something that's a fruitful conversation topic is, removing burdensome regulations as it relates to building, like making it easier for home builders and condo builders and apartment builders to actually get product up. I think the bureaucracy within cities, counties, and states could sometimes hinder that, especially from a speed perspective. So just throwing that out there, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Excellent 2 cents, I'll say. I will share that there have been other municipalities, I think of City of Tempe and City of Phoenix, that have put forth some affordable housing policy changes, not a funding conversation, but some policy changes that look to do exactly that. And then again, I'll drop it in the link or in the chat, a link to a toolkit that my colleague at the Housing Coalition put together that highlights some innovations. We often hear about best practices in other states, and I think we do a pretty good job here, and so we need to lift up some of those best practices, but also address again those tough conversations around how can we mitigate the barriers, how can we create transparency and efficiency at the same time.
That's fantastic, Joan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other committee member have any questions? I do have a couple. One for Joan is, Joan, I didn't see a percentage of senior homeless, and I'm very interested in getting those numbers. I also think that the reason why so much of our homeless count has increased is because there's more information, there's more conversation about it, because for years we didn't talk about it and we didn't track it when we really weren't aware of what was going on, I don't think. So I really appreciate everyone being on top of this, because it is a regional problem that we all need to step up to. And I also want to ask that all of the presenters who use data to be sure that you're getting some data from 211, because all of them for 211, I was on their board for many, many years, and they provide such a great service, but they have a separate veterans phone, and they have everybody separated so they can keep a great count of who the client is and what their needs are. And we need to include those as well as the 911 numbers, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you, Council Member Campbell. Let me just say, Council Member Campbell, I live in Goodyear, and we are seeing a significant increase in folks living on the streets. I'm sure you've seen that as well. That is, I think, due partly because, again, we just don't have enough affordable housing supply, and the cost of rent is just skyrocketed, whereas incomes have remained pretty stagnant.
You're absolutely right. So thank you, Joan. Thank you to all of the presenters. And I am going to now, let's see, if I can figure out where we are. Now I'm going to move to item number 6, which is an overview of the updated MAG website landing pages with information on COVID-19 and eviction prevention resources. Dee Dee Castillo and Brandy Mead will be providing the overview for us.
Should I go first? Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee for letting me provide an update on the MAG response to COVID-19 webpage. We were recently contacted by some of our member agencies regarding transportation to vaccine sites. During our conversations with our member agencies, it was noted that most of the public comments was not really on transportation to sites, but on where to get information on how to register for vaccines. So during our conversation, it was suggested that it would be helpful to have a centralized resource page for COVID-19 information and efforts across the region to avoid duplication of services and to direct our residents on where to go for such information. We have heard from cities and towns that they are strategizing on offering local vaccine sites. So here at MAG, we have a MAG response to COVID-19 page that provided information on protocols that MAG as an agency was putting in place in response to COVID-19. And during our conversation internally at MAG, it was determined that we could build upon this page to provide the most up-to-date information and resources from across the region. We have now updated the MAG response to COVID-19 resource webpage on our updated webpage. And our updated webpage is now highlighted on the MAG's homepage, as you can see before you, where you can click on the banner. Next slide. And where you'll find information, updated information on COVID-19 resources. This webpage offers links to where you can find the most up-to-date information from national, state, and community government agencies, such as the CDC, Arizona Department of Public Health, and Maricopa County. On the left side of the margin, you will find links to cities, towns, and communities so you can access the latest information on where you live. And on the right side, we have links to other resources and data. An example of the use of this information and why we're consolidating this is if a resident in Tempe would like to register to get a vaccine and may think that the Glendale is the only available site. We hope to offer community members resources and information where they can possibly locate a vaccine site closer to them. This in turn would make looking for transportation more on a smaller scale instead of looking for transportation for sites across town. As you know, this information on vaccine and locations and opening of sites is changing on almost a weekly basis. The links go directly to the resources. We have offered this information to our Human Services on the Human Services Transportation newsletter, and we will continue to work with our member agency on this topic. This concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee, and thank you, Dee Dee, for that presentation. I will transition and wanted to give the committee members just a preview of another web page that MAG is currently in the process of updating. And this is based on your feedback from our last Human Services Community Initiatives Committee meeting. At that meeting, we talked about eviction prevention, the need for eviction prevention resources. And we know that there are many resources across the state and within your own cities and towns. And so I've been collecting information on what resources exist, and we are pulling together a website. So I'm going to give you a preview of that today. And then after the meeting, I will be sharing a link with you so you can spend some more time on that. It is in preview form. So if there are resources that you are aware of that are not currently on that page, then please let me know and we will be happy to add those. So I'm going to share my screen. And give me just one moment and I will give you that preview. Okay, so this is, again, it's a preview. So this is what the page will look like. There's just an opening screen that talks about When the eviction moratorium ends, there could be a surge in the number of people who become homeless. And that this eviction prevention page will provide links to eviction-related information resources and helpful tools that are aimed at assisting people who are currently or concerned about facing eviction. So then we'll have different tabs below that members can click on, members of the public can click on to find resource information. So we are still in the process of collecting this resource information and adding, and we may be doing some reorganization of the links, but you can see we have some state and city resources that are available. And then if you click on these different links, it'll take you directly to that site with eviction prevention tools. There's information and referral information connecting people to housing and employment. We also have legal information around eviction prevention, as well as information to many of the cities and towns. Your community action program information is listed. We have the CDC eviction moratorium information, as well as COVID-19 rental assistance and eviction information. We also have the crisis response network, and then some additional statewide resources as well. So again, this is a preview of what the page will look like, and I will send this link out to members of the committee after the meeting so you can take a look. Let me know if there are additional resources within your own city or town that should be added to this page. And once we feel pretty confident that we have all the information, we will make this live and we'll be launching it. And I will certainly let all of the committee members know just as soon as we launch that page. So again, this was a result of the conversation at our last meeting. So I really thank you for bringing this to the forefront and really feel your passion around wanting to do something here. So that concludes my presentation, and I will turn it back over to the chair. I would be happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Brandy. Does any committee member have any questions regarding the last two presentations?
Brandy, this is Vice Mayor Duff again. Do you have a projected time that you think these pages would be available? They're a tremendous resource and they're in need desperately. So I was wondering if you had a projected time.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Duff, members of the committee. The COVID-19 response page should be live now. And then I will send the link out to the eviction prevention page. We can go live with that as soon as today, but I would like to give members an opportunity to just review that information. And if there's anything additional that we need to add to that, we can certainly add additional resources to the page, but we can make that available in live within the next few days, but would like to give you all an opportunity to review that first. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Is there any additional questions from the committee? Brandy, are you going to be sending the presentations out to the committee members?
Yes, I would be happy to do that. And the presentations are posted on the MAG website under meeting materials for today's meeting. But I would be happy to send them out as well.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And I just saw, Madam Chair, members of the committee, that Dee Dee did post a link to the COVID-19 page that is live on the website. So you are able to access that now.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you, Dee Dee, for doing that. All right, I will move to item number 7, an update on committee chair and vice chair appointments, and Brandy Mead will now give us an update.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Wanted to provide an update on the chair and vice chair leadership for this committee. Both of our appointments are due to expire on June 30th of this year. So really want to thank Councilmember Campbell for serving as chair for this group. You've done just a fantastic job. I really appreciate your leadership, Councilmember Campbell. So how the leadership works for the MAG committees, the vice chair will ascend up to the chair position in June. And so we are accepting letters of interest for the vice chair position. and we are accepting those letters of interest through Monday, May 3rd. So if you are interested in serving as the vice chair for this group, I really encourage you to submit a letter of interest, and then those will be going through the MAG Executive Committee for approval. And beginning July 1st, we will have a new vice chair for this committee. And our current vice chair, Councilmember Stewart, will be ascending to the chair position of this group. So really encourage members to consider serving in a leadership role for this committee. If you have any questions, I would be happy to meet with you individually and talk through that with you and answer any questions that you might have. So thank you very much. That does conclude my presentation on this item.
Thank you very much, Brandy. Appreciate your update. So I will move now to item number 9, which is where our members are provided an opportunity to share information and updates for information. So who would like to share information now?
And Vice Mayor, or
Yes,
I'm sorry, Councilmember Campbell, I'm sorry. We missed item number 8, future agenda items.
Oh, thank you. You're absolutely right. I went to the wrong page. So I'm going to go back to item number 8 and ask the committee members, are there any future agenda items or topics that you wish to put before the committee at this time that you're interested in and that you would like us to have on a future agenda?
This is Vice Mayor Duff. I'll just throw out an idea. I'm not sure if if it fits into our committee, but one of the big topics that we're all talking about is the digital divide and what we can do for especially our low-income areas who don't have access to internet, and how that is preventing them from recovering as well. So is that something we would cover under our committee, or is that something in another one?
Vice Mayor Duff and members of the committee, yes, that is something that we can certainly discuss at a future meeting. And I would be really interested and open to hearing from members if you have suggestions on if there are experts around this area or people that we might want to invite to a future meeting to present on this topic. But I think it's an important topic, and we certainly could cover it under the Human Services Committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Vice Mayor Duff. Is there any other topics or of interest that you wish for us to put on a future agenda or discuss?
This is Allie Klein, council member from Surprise. Concurrent with Vice Mayor Duff, I attended a Broadband USA meeting this month, and then there's a bunch of meetings in the sequence. It's a national presentation that looks at 2 parts. One is filling the voids in communities that might have been rural before, and so there is not sufficient broadband available in those communities, and helping the providers financially. There's grant money available for those providers. I don't know all the details yet because I only went to meeting number 1. So, but I'll send that to you, Brandy, if you want information on it. And so part 1 is that it helps the providers to run the string that says it goes from here to here, where maybe it hasn't been viable, whether it was farmland or there weren't many people there, or maybe it was tribal land or something. And the second part is assisting those families with monies every month to help pay for the broadband services that are provided. So it has kind of a 2-prong approach. I was like completely fascinated with this whole idea. So if that's part of what we can put into our community outreach, I think that would be amazing. So, and I'm right with you there, Vice Mayor Duff. I think that that's something that's very important, particularly if you have people who are trying to school from home and work from home, and they may or may not have enough bandwidth and things like that. So that would really be a great opportunity. So if I might send that to you, Brandy, and you can take a look at it and see if you're interested in attending the meetings as well. Otherwise, I'll be glad to forward the information that I get from them.
Thank you, Councilmember Klein. I'd be very interested in receiving that information from you.
Thank you. And Brandy, perhaps we could find out from cable providers in our county what programs they offer to the families that need assistance, either with additional broadband or just even having cable. I do know that even in the city of Goodyear, we have areas that do not have any cable fiber optics, and they are still unable to get on the internet. And it's hard to believe that it's occurring today with the way that we're building. So it could always, another conversation could always be in the housing area, that when the developers develop and build these massive developments, that they include the cable put in or something. I mean, if we're going to stay with the internet and that is always in the future, then that probably needs to be on the table as well. So, and that said, does anyone else have any further comments? Okay, now I will go back to item number 9 and ask the members if you have any information that you or updates you want to share with our committee at this time. I'll share one thing if you don't mind. All Faith Community Services, which is located in Buckeye and is the food bank for the city of Goodyear, is in the process of obtaining a mobile food bank. And by that, they are having a trailer designed specifically for food distribution that will be taken into the neighborhoods of Goodyear and placed on church grounds or wherever we can put it, where we are taking the food into the neighborhoods. And we're also working with the Salvation Army that we will have showers for the homeless at the same time. So I just think I need to give a shout out to All Faith Community Services for the wonderful service that they're providing. So Councilmember Klein, do you have a comment?
No, I have I'm ready for my list of little comments when you're ready for that.
You go right ahead.
Okay, so Surprise did complete and submitted our municipal investment survey. So hopefully they have our parts that they were, so we're not on the list of please turn in your reports. We did recently complete our own homeless count and found 25 unduplicated people. Working with our street outreach and the Salvation Army, we have a trailer event that happens twice a month, which is a new thing for us. We have a local faith-based organization, the Paradise Church, Radiant Church, sorry, it's on Paradise Street, that also is providing drop box food boxes for where people can drive by and pick them up, in addition to St. Mary's Food Bank and our West Valley Food Bank. So we're very fortunate that we have 2 food banks in our community, plus a church food bank, which is reaching out and working with the Dysart Community Center, which is technically in El Mirage, but we do work very carefully with them. They also have a pickup for both food and water at their location. And we are also a member of the Arizona Housing Coalition. So we're trying to reach out in all of these areas to see how our resource center can be very supportive of the community. And Seth Dyson, who's the director, is doing a great job over there.
Thank you. That's wonderful information on Surprise. Does any other committee member have an update you would like to share?
Vice Mayor Duff again. It's more of a comment. You know, we have the American Rescue Act passed in Congress now, and all the municipalities will be receiving funds, and there's some flexibility on those funds. And I know that we have allocations also for homelessness and things. One of the things that we as a region have failed to do is really look at a regional solution to homelessness. How can we come together and maybe using some of these dollars and invest them in a way that is more long-term and coming to the solutions for homelessness and addressing that population. So I'm just putting it out there. We have dollars available, and I know all of our city staff at all our municipalities are looking at this, but it is my hope in some way, and that at least in small neighboring city ways, that we can do something more regionally to address this and put our resources together to accomplish that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Duff. Is there any other comments a committee member would like to share now? Well, I would like to thank staff for putting on this Zoom meeting. I know the logistics sometimes are a nightmare, but we appreciate all that you're doing to keep us together during this COVID-19 lockdown. And we are very grateful that we are able to meet even on Zoom so that we can at least be with one another and share what is going on in our communities. I'd like to thank all of you for attending today. And Brandy, thank you again for your excellent staff work. The meeting is now adjourned.
Thank you, Council Member, and thank you everyone for attending today.